Hey guys, thanks for joining us on Unfathered Fathers. Today I got probably one of my longest friends. This is Anthony McNutt, aka Nutt. So I will be talking to him as Nutt because that's how he's been the whole time we've known each other. Has been Nutt. So Nutt, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here. Thanks for including me.
Yeah, we're gonna try to save you guys from our endless stories of us being idiots and goofy. Yeah. But me and Anthony, we met in 7th grade, and we kind of, I think we connected because we have similar, our growing up was similar as far as just not having a father presence around, as far as a dad.
Right.
But so, Nut, let's get into kind of where you were born and just childhood.
Yeah, man. So I was born in Mountain Home, Arkansas, and I grew up in a small town called Flippin, mainly in the first part of my life of elementary. And I lived. My mother actually got pregnant with me at 13 years old, and she was a kid herself, and it was a very small town, rural America upbringing. Her parents were very connected in the church, and then on my dad's side, he was significantly older than my mother. He was 17 at the time that my mom got pregnant, or 18 actually, I think so. And his parents were the pastors of the church. So in the 80s, this wasn't common, and it caused a lot of tension in the community and in the church, and it ended up splitting the church. And so they ended up moving off to a different area and took a different Assembly of God church at that time to pastor. And then I grew up really just knowing my mom and her side of the family.
So growing up, I imagine, so your mom and dad, being so young, they didn't get married or get together, didn't raise you together.
That's right. Yep.
Was it kind of one of them deals where like your mom's parents are like, hey, you're not coming around, and or did he just not want anything to do with you, or what?
The way I understand it, and I heard this from, my grandparents growing up and my mom, and as well as my dad, when I eventually got to know him, was he was very much trying to be present and trying to insert himself and let's make it right now, and what do I got to do? And they were really in a position of like, our 13-year-old daughter is pregnant. We need some time to process this mentally.
Yeah.
So it was just give us some room for a minute, which he didn't respect that. And then it turned into stop it. And, but then when he moved off is still kind of is a young man himself. He's probably a legal adult technically at that point in time, but he's still living at home and, working smaller income jobs and, and things like that at that time in his life.
And I kind of understand that because I'm thinking that dynamic, which I got a 17-year-old daughter, but I got two 12-year-old, or a 12-year-old daughter and 11. But in one more year, 13,
yeah.
If a 17 or 18-year-old kid got my 13-year-old daughter, I'd probably be like, you can come around, but you're going to be dead. I'm going to be in the backyard.
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah.
You ain't coming around
acting
like you're Mr. Dad. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough.
And I think he was humble. I don't think he was acting, anything like that. I think he was trying to take ownership. The way they described it was they looked at him as a son. Like it'd be no big deal for them to be in bed and him come in the house at midnight and get in the fridge and fall asleep on the couch. Like that was the kind of dynamic in relation. So it really hurt them, and they almost felt like they were losing a son, through this process too. Wow. So I didn't ever take it that his demeanor was arrogant, or I think it was just overwhelming when they needed some space.
Yeah. Yeah. But in that situation, probably for your grandpa, it probably didn't matter what his demeanor was. It's like, that's tough.
You can imagine.
Your poor grandpa.
The story I heard is there was a night when he was sneaking to a bedroom window to talk to my mom, not obeying the give us some room, and a few uncles caught him at the end of the drive and might have
Slapped him around a little bit.
might have spiffed him up a little bit. But at the time, he was also with a cousin in the family. So the cousin of the family ended up getting it too. So they were kind of equal opportunity distributor of the evening, I guess.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't think they hurt him bad. I think they just might have spooked him.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Don't be sneaking into the.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot better than a gunshot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of tell me kind of early memories and just you and your mom, what the dynamics of that was, whether what your role your grandparents played, and just kind of growing up.
Yeah. So for me, I can remember a period not quite understanding the relationship on mother-son, side of things. As a matter, because I'm growing up in a house, and at that point in time, her older sister was still in high school along with her. They're still going to school every day. And I'm growing up in that house with her and her older sister. So it almost feels like a dynamic to me as I'm the young brother. And I'm, running around the house hearing them call them mom and dad, or, mom, and daddy or whatever. And I guess I had started picking up on that language. And I think that my grandparents were like, wait, we need to this is complicated, but we need to establish some healthy boundaries. So I started calling my papa, my mom's dad. But then I'd already kind of been in the habit of calling my grandmother mom. And I didn't understand why I was calling her something different, than the others. So I got it to grandmom. And that's what I call her to this day. Is grandmom. I don't call her grandma or.
This is crazy, Nut, because I don't know if I've ever even. I knew your mom. I've forgotten. Of course, when we're kids and you say, "Yeah, my mom had me when she was 13," we're kids. Like really, that don't. Mm-hmm. Now as an adult having kids, like you realize how young that is.
She was a kid.
But yeah, and then your grandparents, they don't even have. She's just starting high school.
Yeah, right? Not quite.
Not even in high school.
Yeah.
And now you got 2 kids.
She was in 7th grade dating a senior.
Still in school. Mm-hmm. And now you got a baby.
Yep.
And
can't be a grandparent. You've got to be a parent to the grandchild because.
Oh, yeah. Because your mom being 13, she's still got high school or school.
They're still disciplining her, and they're still getting on to her.
Spanking their kid and their grandkids at the same time for.
Yep. And the doctor told them that would be the case. Matter of fact, the doctors encouraged them not to have me and to go ahead and have an abortion. And they said, don't ever mention it again. It's not an option.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting through that, and when did that start to change or figure out, or did you have a hard time? Did your mom lately, like, when did she transition into that of, this is mom?
Yeah, when I was 4, she got married for the first time to a guy that lived in Mountain Home. And then I had to move out and in with them. And I remember not wanting to do that and not understanding, why do I have to go too? Just let her go and I'll stay here. I still not quite understanding that, but I think living in that environment, with her and him, I think then I started to get an understanding of that. Yeah.
So, and then you said that the first time you met your dad was when?
I was 5.
And what spawned that? What was the reason for that? Did the relationship continue after that?
Yeah. So, my dad, he ended up marrying a lady and having a little girl. Him and her had a little girl together. And pretty quickly, actually, after they had left the area, and had established a different life somewhere else. But I from my understanding, it was just he wanted to meet me, and I was asking questions about him, for sure. But yeah, I remember where I was in my driveway and flipping, him getting out of the car. My mom had went and met him somewhere and drove him there. And he got out of the car and he got down on one knee and he said, "I'm your dad," and he gave me a Tonka toy.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then did visitation and stuff start happening after that, or was that just kind of?
No, not really. I saw him again. He went to prison shortly after that for the first time, and then in Arkansas. And then I saw him again when I was 7. He brought me a 4-wheeler, and it was a Yamaha Stinger, little red, like 60 cc, and I rode the wheels off of that thing. Man, I loved it. I love that thing. So I always wanted a horse, and they weren't going to get me a horse. I couldn't believe I signed off on a 4-wheeler.
Yeah.
But once I got the 4-wheeler, I finally quit asking about the horse, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's when. And then he went back to prison in Texas. That time he went in Texas, and then I didn't see him again until I was 16.
Okay. Yeah, and I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember you talking
Yeah,
about.
you were in my life then.
Yeah, seeing him and
Yeah.
that's crazy. I didn't realize he was in prison that long.
Yeah, he was in prison most of his life.
Wow.
He
So-
was in every penitentiary in the state of Arkansas and the state of Texas.
So, when, like, in your growing up in Flippin, when your mom got married, how long was she with that guy? What was life like growing up there? Or, I mean, how long did that last?
Yeah.
Because she would have only been like 17 when she got married. If you were 4, right?
Yeah, probably
17 or 18.
Yeah. She was 14 when she gave birth to me.
Okay.
I was born in August, and her birthday's in April.
So then maybe she was 18.
She might have been 8. She's probably 18 then, because I doubt my grandparents would have signed off on that guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't
a good guy.
No, he's horrible. Yeah, he's horrible. Very, very abusive. He was just a bad person. He wasn't great. And I, unfortunately, I still remember, a lot of those abuse stories and things. Yeah.
And so, was it pretty quick that you guys moved back in with your grandparents, or?
Yeah, when they divorced, they separated, and we moved back in with my grandparents, and then they got back together, and they lived in an apartment flipping, and I lived there with them in that apartment flipping too, until they finally separated for good.
Okay. And this time, were you in school when they were still together? Or?
No.
No. Okay.
No, I hadn't started elementary yet.
Okay, so talk about like going to school and Flippin.
Yeah, so I loved it, and my family, it's a small town, and all of my family lived on the same road within like a half mile from each other. It was really unique, and my great-grandfather was a farmer, and he had several head of cattle, and so I got to grow up, being around that and helping out, and I loved it. I loved livestock and things like that, and I loved living in the country, and it was beautiful where we lived. Flippin, the elementary school, my aunt was a teacher there, so that was kind of neat. I got to, if something ever happened bad at school, Aunt Sherry could come talk to me, or something like that. That was kind of unique. And then I had a cousin that was close to my age. That's the other unique thing about me being born when I was, is there really wasn't anybody of my generation. I was the one and only.
As far as in your family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a cousin now that my mom's older sister had a daughter, and she just turned 18 recently. So that's the age gap.
Yeah.
So I found myself a lot. My mom's cousins were was really the ones I was playing with. And they were all just a touch older than me, except for one, and her name was Rhonda. She was in a wheelchair.
I remember her, yeah.
She was a year older than me, but we were in the same grade, and she passed at COVID time. But yeah, so Rhonda.
Yeah, I met
was my
her
buddy.
that one time I went to Flippin with y'all, and we went to your old church.
Yeah.
And I met her there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Rhonda was my buddy.
Yeah. So, when you moved back in with your grandparents, were you pretty sheltered at that point? Your grandparents,
Oh, yeah.
like always in church.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just kind of.
When that church split happened, my great-grandfather started a non-denominational church, and it originally started with 13 family members, and it's still going today. And, years after it, they were able to buy some property and build a church on there. And, it has decent sized congregation a day for that small area. And but yeah, our family, it's White River Full Gospel. It originally started that church, and I know that I was saved and right with Jesus by the time I was 5 years old personally. Like, where I loved God, and I loved Jesus, and I was very committed. I think this is the right word. Maybe.
So we'll fast forward because I got to meet your grandparents after we went out there flipping, and your grandma and grandpa salt of the earth. They're great people. Yeah. Your grandma would make me bonbons after my grandma passed away. She would at Christmas make me bonbons, and you'd bring them to me. And then I got to meet your grandfather. Went down to their house, and just extraordinary people, God-fearing people. Yep. I'm sure they tried to, in the situation they were put in, tried to do the very best they could. Yep. But eventually, you and your mom come up to Northwest Arkansas. Yep. What brought y'all to Northwest Arkansas?
Mom originally moved here for work, and I didn't come with her. At first, I stayed. There was several times between second and fourth grade to where I'd live with my grandparents or I'd live with my mom. I'd live with my grandparents, live with my mom. And then once I came up to Fayetteville in fourth grade, that was the final time. I never went back to live with my grandparents. But yeah, that was, I can't remember where you were going with that question, but that
Well, I was just wondering what brought you up to Northwest Arkansas.
She
got
came
a
for
job.
work.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a small town. There was very limited opportunities, and she just found different work that she could do.
And where'd you go to school when you first came up here?
My first school outside of Flippin was Huntsville. I went to Huntsville in second grade for a little bit, and then I went back to Flippin, and then I came. Then the next school I went to in Fayetteville was Leverett, and then I went back to Flippin, and then I came back to Fayetteville, went to Leverett, and then I went to Washington Elementary in Fayetteville, and I stayed there until sixth grade. At that time, my mom was married to a different guy, and where we lived, I was technically in Farmington School District, but Mom was successful at getting a transfer,
school choice or something,
transfer because of how much I'd moved, and compelled them to let me stay settled where I'd finally spent some duration of time, and they did. In doing that, there was a neighborhood kid there that was my age named Josh Romer. And man, me and him were best friends. I mean, we hit it off, and we were together all the time. And, whenever it was a weekend or after school, man, we were getting on our bicycles and meeting in the middle, or I'd go to his house or he'd come to mine, and we were really good friends. So then when sixth grade ended, I had an opportunity to go to Ramey or to go to Farmington. And Josh was begging me to go to Farmington. He's like, man, we can be at school together. We don't have to wait. And I was like, I'm switching anyway. And actually what pushed me over the top was a lot of my closest friends in Fayetteville were going to Woodland. And if I was going to go to a Fayetteville school, it was going to have to be Ramey because of where I lived. So I was like, I'm going to be mixing up all these friends anyway. I might as well go where I know at least I have one good friend. And so that's what brought me to Farmington.
Gotcha. So when you were in Farmington, that's kind of when you moved into Farmington, I was going to Farmington. That's where eventually we ended up meeting. Yep. But I don't remember, and you got a lot better memory. He remembers my birthday. I told him, I said, that's a weird gift that doesn't really help him anyway, but he's got a good memory. But do you remember how we first met?
Yep.
Was it at school?
Mm-hmm. You were you got in a fight in the locker room, and I think I don't guess I have to say the name, but you got in a fight in the locker room, and I remember it seemed like the kids were turning on you in the situation, or I felt like they were going to jump on you or something, and I didn't really know you. I'd seen you a few times.
It was over the lock. There was two kids.
Yeah, and so I was like, stop. You're not gonna. You'll fight us both, kind of thing. And then I remember your chain. I don't know if your chain got broke or something, but when I looked up, you had a red mark on your neck. I was like, man, are you okay? Are you bleeding? And you're like, what? And you're like, oh, no, it's a birthmark.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of when we
started.
It's
crazy. That went away.
Did it?
I forget that until somebody brings it up or forget that you have it. But yeah, I had a big red spot on my neck, and it looked like a hickey. I would get made fun of all the time, but
I thought it was from when they got you in a headlock and it hit, or something. And I thought it was from the scuffle. It wasn't much of a fight. It was a 7th grade fight.
Yeah.
It wasn't much of a.
Yeah. Oh, it's a big deal.
I mean, everybody's watching.
When we met, Nutt, and you're going to have to help me bring back the memories, because I can usually remember the bad stuff pretty easily, but just the innocent good times sometimes hard to reflect. But did we hit it off pretty quickly?
Yeah.
Just kind of become friends after that moment?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And to that point, you pretty much was a pretty good kid. Good grades, hanging around other good kids, and you had no idea who you were meeting in that moment.
I had struggled with sin, a little bit, and when I moved up here, I wasn't actively in church, like I was when I was at home and flipping. Whenever I was at home and flipping, I was walking the straight and narrow, always in my Bible, always going to church. But when you're doing that, it's kind of easier to stay in it. But when you start missing that fellowship and being around those like people that are doing those kind of things, then I started doing things that the other people I was around started doing, you know. And some of that was before you, man. I know you take a lot of that of like you corrupted me, but some of that stuff was before you. But no, I wasn't. It's mainly your fault.
Yeah. I guarantee you wasn't doing nothing as close to the things that I got you doing. Yeah. All right. So we meet, and it wasn't probably too long after that. I think I went to your house for the first time before you ever came to mine. Is that right? When you lived?
No, I don't think so. No. I think the first time I came, I stayed the night with you, and I was always pretty headstrong about that because I didn't like my living situation with my stepdad. And
he didn't really like people coming over, did he?
Yeah, it was just embarrassing to have people come over with him around. Yeah, So,
because I wanted you to go somewhere on my dirt bike, and you were like, "Oh, my mom won't let me," and I'm like, "Dude, your mom's not here."
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes. I kind of like, and that would blow my mind. I'm like, dude, you're worried about what your mom thinks she ain't around. How's she even going to know? And you're like, no, she told me I can't.
Yeah.
So that concept didn't.
My mom was dropping me off the first time I ever stayed the night at your house, and I saw that little 80cc Honda. And I was like, oh, and she goes, don't you get Anthony? Do you hear me? You better not get on that bike. I was like, Mom, and she's like, I said no. I was like, all right.
Yeah, Paige is going to find out a lot of stuff that she told us to do, but we didn't listen.
And then it never really came up. I was kind of embarrassed by it. My mom was what I viewed as overprotective at that time. And, she was sheltered herself and naive herself. And she's just trying to make sure she keeps her kid alive and doesn't mess the kid up. Like I get it now.
But she had every right. She had no idea that when she left, I was going to get you on a dirt bike and we'd be cruising down the highway.
And I'm holding fishing poles.
Yeah. So she had the right to tell you, don't get on the dirt bike with him.
And you said, hey, you like to go fishing? You want to go fish in this pond? I said, yes. And we started getting all the fishing stuff together, and I was so excited. And then you pulled the motorcycle around. And I was like, oh, I can't go. And you're like, why not? I said, my mom said I can't ride your dirt bike. And you go, well, I'm not going to tell her, get on. And I was like, oh. It never crossed my mind to do something my mom said not to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, my kids are going to be questioning me on that.
Yeah.
So, very quickly we become kind of connected at the hips. So we just pretty much done everything together. And probably we didn't realize it, but just kind of growing up the same way, we were trying to figure out what being young men look like, and not really having that, neither one of us really had, other than our moms and our, the moms
and our grandpas. We both had stand-up stellar grandparents.
Yeah, but and your grandpa was the same as mine. He was a salt of the earth guy, a great guy, but he wasn't there disciplining us. Like, when I was a kid getting in trouble, my grandpa never was like spanking me or getting on. He was just a good man that was around, and he eventually taught me the value of work and stuff, and he lived an example, but he was not a father to me. He wasn't disciplining me and making sure I was doing right. And so, and my mom, she was a mess herself. She was trying to keep her life together and trying to, she was something. One day she would be doing okay, and the next day she is not, and just kind of back and forth. And then really caught up in guys, losers, and all.
Yep.
But anyway, there wasn't really much. Your mom tried to keep you.
Oh yeah, you and I were very similar, and my mom, she worked so hard. There was times my mom worked 3 jobs just to keep me, just to support me.
Yeah.
I don't know when she slept, but she was not afraid to work. She was a hard worker, and she wasn't into drugs or alcohol or or anything like that. I mean, she was legitimately like trying to figure out life and how to support a child, and she made it. She did it.
Yeah. But we quickly let at first the stuff we were doing pretty not too bad, kind of innocent, but pretty.
It was a big deal to me.
Yeah, but pretty quickly, especially start of 8th grade, towards the end of 7th grade, 8th grade,
9th grade for sure for me. Yeah.
It got a little bit more extreme and kept getting more and more extreme and bigger consequences and bigger trouble. And, but we both got in trouble with the law, kind of the same, for the same reasons. And some of those stories, we kind of laugh about them now when we tell them. They're a lot of them are pretty shameful.
They are,
and we laugh about them because we're no longer those. And two, we can't believe some of the stuff we did.
Thank goodness we didn't have phones to record activities.
Gosh, yeah,
we'd still be in prison.
Yeah, but the first time we did go to your mom and Lynn's house, just to show how, because Nutt was a good kid. Like he wasn't he didn't have a desire to get in trouble. He was just my friend, and
I like Dylan.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff he didn't realize how bad it was until.
Didn't have a clue.
Yeah, but I went to his house, and you got to think I was so ornery. I had these Big Johnson T-shirts and a '69 hat, and I was like 14 years old or 13, and went over to his house and was going to meet his mom and stepdad for the first time, and I was like, "Hey man, you don't think they'll have a problem with my hat?" And Nutt, he just thought it was a number. He had no idea what 69 meant, and he's like, "No, dude, she don't care nothing about numbers." Like unoffended by numbers, and so you got to think her mom or his mom being sheltered, and then the stepdad that already doesn't want people over, and then I walk in and I got a Big Johnson T-shirt and a '69 hat, and I don't know if I was 13 or 14, but just that's the last person you want to see
any of that meant.
hanging out with your kid.
Yeah.
But then we kind of got into honor. We deceived your mom. She wanted us to bring this up so that, but we would take her car, and at 14 I got a learner's permit, and it looked like a driver's license. Well, Nutt's mom, pretty young and kind of naive to ornery teenagers that would just flat out lie to her. I convinced her that I had my driver's license, and she had a brand new Altima, her only transportation.
5-speed.
Yeah,
Black,
and her work, and we would cruise around town. We would tell girls that it was ours, and
yes,
we're just 14 years old driving everywhere. We had our own vehicle, and my mom had seen us driving.
Well, she saw us in it all the time, but I don't remember what happened this time at the house.
She was probably mad.
She was mad.
But
we did something to make her mad, and by the time we got home,
she ratted on us.
Yeah, she snitched.
Yeah,
which was not cool.
Yeah. So we pull into Nutt's house, and
we walk in the door, and she's like, "I thought he had a license," and we wanted to turn around and walk right back out.
Yeah,
but she wouldn't let us.
Yeah, so she found out that we had deceived her and been driving her car around with no license.
Yes.
But we done goofy things. We used to take mascara and try to
oh my goodness,
darken our beard so we could buy cigarettes and dip. Yeah, we would go to Cardinal Corner. They had this.
Well, you could walk in and say it's for my mom. Like, oh, your mom's dipping Copenhagen.
Yeah. We would. We
would try
to darken, make it look like we had a mustache and go into a gas station that was right by the high school, which the workers in there probably knew that we were in, knew us or seen us in there before, and all of a sudden we got this fake mustache. Oh, no telling how goofy. Yeah, we just had no sense.
No.
But we were able to buy cigarettes and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we got it all the time. So,
especially for the football games, I'd walk up to Cardinal Corner and get a can of snuff.
Yeah, somehow we made it. Yeah, we were able to deceive them. But then as we got older, we got a little bit more ornery and more trouble. Yep. I got into stealing and kind of brought you into that.
Yep.
And we started what we called car shopping, breaking into cars, and it was terrible. And when we talk about these things, we know how terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it just that's what happens when you have young men, and not in every case, but we didn't really have that structure, and then we were feeding off each other, and nobody really lined us out. If we would. That's the value of a dad. If we would have had good dads there, and they would have wrung our necks and busted our butts and be like, boys, you ain't leaving the house.
Boys have a natural tendency to do testosterone boys
to be
things, especially when they're growing up. And if they don't have somebody there that understands what they're going through and has went to guide that and direct to keep it in between the rails, they'll get outside the rails, or certainly can. We did. Yep. To your point, I think that it would have been more beneficial for us if we'd have had that person there that understood how a male's wired and what we were trying to do, but then just corralled it in healthy
channel us
activity.
into a
healthy expressions of it,
instead
of just doing whatever we thought we wanted to do.
Yeah, because we both end up getting felonies.
Yeah,
but before we were adults,
thankfully, yeah.
And I mean, from getting caught, getting caught stealing, I got caught several times. I don't know how many times you got busted, but and then we both had fleeing the scenes.
Yeah. Are we going to list all the charges?
Well, I'm making a point. I mean, we were, me and you both, from the way we grew up. Nutt met his dad the first time at 5 years old. I met my dad the first time at 11 years old. But it was just a meeting, and I met my dad. I got to see my dad a couple times when I was maybe 4 different times by the time I was 18, something like that. Not a whole lot, and it was only for a couple days at a time. I flew out to California once and spent a week maybe, and then he flew to Arkansas the first time he met me, and it was for like 4 days. But we. We both were down a path that if we would have continued, we'd have been just like your dad and probably like my dad or my mom and just either in prison all our life. I mean, we were on a road to where
dead or in prison.
We were going to be in prison. Yeah. And really, the charges that we both got, if we would have been adults, we probably would have went to prison.
Correct. Yep.
Because I actually got busted again when I was already on probation. And then, and two, we got in trouble before the 3-strike law was into place. Because, anyway, but we're just on the road to ruining our lives, not really having direction, not going to amount to anything. Definitely not good husband or father material.
No. Yeah.
And then I actually we kind of separated kind of the time when I started getting on meth and drugs and stuff. Cause you never really, even though you kind of honoring and got into some trouble and stuff, you were always really had a pretty good, conviction about drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. Like you never, one time you got hammered drunk, ruined a pair of my white Levi's, right?
Yep.
This guy, I don't even know if I tell that story.
I don't care. Whatever.
So when we were, I don't know, we were probably 15, 16
14,
years old. Were we 14?
Yeah.
So we were going to go to a barn party, and it was a party in the loft of a barn. And
just as it sounds.
Yeah. And I had already been drinking. I mean, I'd already been drinking, smoking weed, so it wasn't nothing new to me. Nutt, I don't think had ever even smelt alcohol. Mm-mm. And definitely, he didn't even like to get weed. And later on, just being around me and in the same room, he would get contact high. But we went to this party. Did you take a hit? Did you smoke?
No.
But you were just up there around it.
No, I was drinking.
But we were smoking weed on top up in the.
You guys might have been, but I
Anyway, so I don't know if he got contact high or not, but he ended up getting a 40 ounce
of Old English,
and got hammered drunk, and this is literally the first time he ever tries alcohol. He gets an Old English 40 ounce beer and gets drunk, pees all over himself. Starts rolling around in dirt, which quickly becomes urine-stained mud, and he's got to come. He's staying the night at my house, and I have to figure out how to get him.
Oh, you just threw me in the back of a pickup truck.
Yeah, well, you peed all over yourself. I didn't even know how we got there, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to get home. Nobody wanted to give us a ride because he was belligerent drunk. And acting a fool, like just, I mean, you know, he didn't know he didn't know what he was doing. But yeah, that was his first.
To make matters worse, the real downer about that night was there was a kid that went to our school that was, you know, did not like me. He was older than us. But in my back pocket, I had a leather wallet that my dad had made me from prison. And that guy
stole
took it, and destroyed it, and you know, so I never got that wallet back.
Yeah.
But
so yeah, Nutt. I mean, that's just Nutt went there just to hang out. I probably talked him into going. He probably didn't want to go, but he just, me and my friend went with me. End up, you know, and half the school was probably there. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, so you're pretty embarrassing, and I mean, you know, that's the importance of the influence. And thankfully God has both saved us and now we're great friends, and we talk about, you know, we encourage each other in the Lord. But at that time, man, when they say that birds of a feather flock together, or that you are the friends that you make, you know, that's a great example of probably something you'd never have done if you just stayed with the right group. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so that was a time we got back to the house, and I think, you know, not a long night of you throwing up in one of my trash cans and mm-hmm. trying to keep you quiet so that my mom doesn't know that you're in there drunk and peed all over yourself. But anyway, there's hundreds of stories like that.
Yeah.
But so.
Well, to be clear, I only peed on myself.
Yeah. I think that might have been one of the only handful of times that you ever got drunk. Yeah. But yeah, after that, we would be getting high and stuff all the time. And when I was just smoking weed and doing pills, Nutt was, you know, we were still good friends and hanging out. And he would usually he'd be the designated driver, and he'd be the one that'd be there to make sure that we weren't trying to get in fights or getting
was always
arrested
the DD and the referee.
Yep. And but there was a time to where I started getting into harder drugs, got onto meth, and we kind of separated. There was probably a couple years in our life, maybe even longer than that, maybe 3, that we really kind of lost connection. And he kind of done his own thing. I think you got started mechanicing and trying to get a job and do what's right. And I was, you know, pretty much all my weekends were at the club or strip club and drinking and, you know, doing drugs. And so we just really were in 2 different places. But we got reconnected. I actually gave my life to God. I met Jennifer and wanted to change and started that change. And we kind of got reconnected. But at the time, Nutt, you weren't really interested in serving the Lord. I mean, you weren't necessarily doing bad, but you just
I did not have a committed walk.
Yeah. I mean, you were kind of just
contradicting things in my life.
Yeah. And actually, even when I built my first house, I don't know that you were living for the Lord there, because you were going to the club and stuff every once in a while. And,
yeah.
But eventually,
I was married really before I came back around, and I mean, to be frank, my marriage had hit a spot to where it was going to fail and end, and Crystal and I had been married 7 years at this time. And, you know, I hadn't been the spiritual leader of our house, and it showed. And we had done different marriage counselings and had paid therapists, and we'd done everything, and it just wasn't working. So a guy I worked with, he was a youth pastor, and really good. He's 10 years older than me, and still talk to him this day, but just a really solid guy. And he'd had struggles in his life, you know, like us, like all of us and stuff. But he was very invested and persistent that my marriage didn't end, and was really he was annoyingly involved almost to a point, you know, to where it was like he wasn't going to let go. He was, at times I felt like he cared more about my marriage existing than I did. And he told me, he said, you've got to meet with this guy. He said he married my wife and I and did our pre-marriage counseling and stuff like that. And he goes, and he's the best I've ever seen. And I'm a minister. You know, he's like, this guy's. So I called that guy and left him a voicemail. He didn't answer. And then a week goes by and he asked me, how'd that go? And I said, oh, the guy didn't answer. And, you know, this is over anyway. And so he probably went in the other room and called the guy and said, hey, you got to call this guy now. You know, I shared your contact information. And the guy called me back, and I told him what was going on, and he listened to me. And he ended up being my pastor for 12 years. But he said, I remember, he said, I'll be happy to meet with you guys, and I'm not going to charge you anything, he was the first one that did that. And he said, but I will not work at your marriage harder than you will. And that stuck with me. You know, I was like, whoa, that was kind of an interesting thing to say, you know.
Say that again.
He said, I will not work at your marriage harder than you will. So, you know, basically,
it ain't gonna work unless you put in the work.
Yeah. And I think he knew that I was out. What I was doing, if I'm being honest, I was checking boxes so I could tell a story in a bar later about how it wasn't my fault and that I did everything I could do. You know, if I'm being honest. But, you know, Crystal just didn't have the husband that she deserved, and she probably still doesn't. You know, in a lot of ways, I could be so much better. But anyway, yeah, so we started going to counseling with him, and we'd been doing that for months, and he'd never even invited us to his church. And I remember we were driving home one time, we mentioned that to one another. We're like, how messed up are we? He doesn't even want us around his congregation. You know, like the guy hadn't even, and, you know, that wasn't it. He just really wanted us to focus on Jesus more than he wanted us to focus on a building, you know, at that point in time.
Now, let me ask you this, because like you said, you grew up in the church, right? And you already had like this foundation. Why? I mean, to me, even how hard marriage is, why did you not just go like, oh, I gotta give my life to God.
It was surface level, my understanding. You know, I knew and loved God as much as a 5-year-old could and understand, you know, in 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, whatever that was. But as far as understanding the application of how to apply it to your life, I didn't have a clue. You know, it was just Bible verses, or if you go to church on Sunday, and we went to church on Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday, revivals, that's great. And that's 30 minutes here, an hour there, but then the rest of your week is this other stuff. You know, it's a challenge.
Because when you moved over to like Farmington area and stuff, you never went to church after that, unless you went back to Flippin probably when you went to visit.
That's right.
Yeah, so I mean, really wasn't actively pursuing God or
and you know, I think that happens with a lot of youth is they have this faith so claimed, but then they get out into adulthood, and if they haven't, you know, when the word says train them up in the way they should go and they won't ever leave it, it's got to be a genuine training up. Yeah, it can't just be that we remembered some Bible verses and went to a church building.
Yeah, you know, that scripture. I've wondered that because, you know, I've known families and then raising my own children, like, you know, they go to church now because I make them go to church, you know, when they're in my home, like it's not an option. You're going to church, but when they're adults, they get that option, whether they, like Weston, he lives on his own. Sometimes he goes to church, sometimes he doesn't. If he was in my home, he would go every time that, every Sunday. But, so I think that I'm wondering if when it says that they can't depart from it, because me and you both have the same as, even though we were doing wrong, we knew it was wrong.
Yep.
Right. We had the conviction.
Absolutely.
Because of how our grandparents were, and they told us. And so I think we didn't depart from the conviction. The conviction was established in us, and we had to choose to do wrong, knowing that it was wrong.
Correct.
To where when we, a lot of our friends that we hung out with, they didn't have the same convictions that me and you did. Yes. They didn't know, they didn't even have grandparents that told them.
There was nothing governing them. Their own moral code was what they determined it to be. It's not, even though it's not that they had ever had anything beyond that established. Yeah. Yeah.
But we kind of had this, just that, and your route was a little bit more established than mine, but it was enough to where, my grandparents instilled in me, like, you're going to go to hell. If you don't live for Jesus and surrender your life and change your ways, there's consequences to this.
Very much how mine were too.
And but anyway, so that, but it does, and I remember when me and Jennifer got married, because, I give my life, I knew that I could not make a marriage work. And it's crazy that you didn't have the same thought, because I would think that you would, because you were always a little bit more grounded than I was. You were always trying to keep me out of trouble, or trying to be like, Dylan, I don't think this is a good idea. And I'd be like, shut up, Nutt, we're doing it, whatever. But I remember seeing you and Crystal came to my house there one time on a motorcycle, your motorcycle, and you guys just stopped by.
You and I were very much, you would say, we're going to do this. And I'd say, that's a really bad idea. When do we leave? That's pretty much how we were. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
But I remember thinking, like almost shocked, like, I can't believe Nutt's not living for the Lord. Like, it really, because I would have thought you would have made that decision way sooner than me, especially when you got married. And I remember thinking, that dude don't even go to church. He's married. Like, how he knows how this is going to end? Mm-hmm. Like, we barely, we there's no way we had it figured out outside of God. Like, we know what that looks like. Yeah. So you end up being married, and then the consequences of not serving God, not being the spiritual leader, and it kind of bit you in the butt. Mm-hmm. And so that was the wake up call. And then you go to this counseling. In that counseling, when did it grab hold to you're like, I got to totally surrender to God?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I remember it was one night. We weren't in counseling, and I was struggling with something, and I called that pastor, and it was probably 9, 10 o'clock at night, and he answered his phone. Man, he's just phenomenal dude, and anyway, he told me basically what I was still trying to do was to get his blessing on divorcing Crystal. And I had been seeing this guy for 3 to 6 months. And he told me, he said, God hates divorce. He would not give me what I needed to hear. Mm. And at that point in time, I remember thinking, I've got to quit going through the motions, and I've got to literally walk this out. If I'm, and that, I think that is the point when I started going, okay, when I genuinely started trying and putting my.
Do you remember that conversation with God? Because for me, when I surrendered my life to, because I had, when I was younger, going from a bad trip, freaking out, seeing a demon in my room, and then trying to go to church, bringing people from school to church, and get, trying to do what's right, and then falling away, and then going even further off the deep end. I had made God a ton of empty promises. Every time I get in trouble or have a felony or feel like I was going to die from being way too high or something like that, or getting pulled over, you have the, God, if you get me out of this, I'll never do this again.
Right.
You know, and then you get out of it and you go right back to it, right?
Yeah, I don't remember ploying to God with it like that. I remember that being the first time that I had the resolve to go, I'm going to authentically try. And I'm not just checking the boxes so I look like the good guy in the story.
Authentically try it on your marriage or your what?
On my marriage.
Okay.
Yeah, we weren't, just because we were going to that Christian pastor, I don't even think we'd actually been to his church yet. We had not.
So you were just like, okay, I'm gonna make my marriage work, but you still hadn't fully committed to serving the Lord.
Yeah, yeah. And then and her and I, even before this rough patch, we had tried different churches, you know, throughout our marriage, and we just never felt connected. It didn't feel right, and we could also find an excuse of why it wasn't. You know?
Yeah, because if you're truly living for God, like finding the church, finding the right church doesn't build the relationship with Jesus Christ, right? You know, I mean, that doesn't matter. It's like pulling into a gas station and go, if I find the right gas station, my truck all of a sudden is going to become a hot rod or a Corvette. You know, I mean, it's like it does. Church buildings are all over the place, you know, but
for us, when we finally did that and took that commitment, I remember when we took each other's hands and walked down the aisle together, you know, and prayed and I remember where we were in that church in Siloam and what that was like, and that was really a turning point, you know, I think for Crystal and I. And you know, again, I don't really remember making God promises through it by any means. I don't think I believed enough in myself to say such a thing, you know, really. But I remember asking for his help and admitting that I couldn't do it without him and, you know, and stuff like that.
Mm. So fast forward, and you and Crystal started working on your marriage.
Yep.
And got into a good place. Mm-hmm. You know, God probably gave you some wisdom on how to be a good man and honor her. And then you guys got involved in a church and you started playing worship music, praise and worship, whatever. But then what was that? Did that just end all fix all? I mean, was that the end of the struggle and life was great, or was there still something missing?
No, I mean, part of our problems, there was a stress on our marriage and children, and we tried for years, and very unsuccessful, like more than 10, like 12, years.
12 years without her getting pregnant.
Yeah, and along that timeline, we had done fertility, where we had spent thousands of dollars, trying. We had done attempts at adoptions, and they always fell through, for whatever reason, stuff like that.
So when a husband and wife is trying for kids, and at year 5, 6, is that like you got to be on eggshells about certain and triggers and
absolutely, and what for us, we both had stuff. I had big stuff. So then as a man, you feel like you can't do that. So you're less of a man. You can't produce or do these things. And then you're causing unhappiness here for her because you can't provide in this certain area.
You can easily wear it's my fault.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And most guys are going to have it wired. It's our job to take care of them, and provide, and so we're going to bear a lot of that that's not fair to ourselves, but we're still going to go through it. And I did. And then, for Crystal, you'd hear of people having children, and it's like, oh, and you're happy for them, and everything. But at the same time,
but it's just every time it's a reminder that you don't.
You're not. Yeah. And what's wrong with me? Why am I not good enough? And then you'd hear of some folks having children that you didn't understand. You're like, they've got 7 with 5 different guys, and they're, you'd say all these things. Why can't I just have one? I mean, you start doing this comparison. It's not fair, or realistic anyway. But yeah, so that was a struggle.
How many years were y'all married before Memphis came along?
Memphis was born in 2018, and so I guess that means that our house was finished in November of 17 that we live in now.
Yeah, but how long had y'all been married?
Oh, I'm sorry. We got married in 05. So, knocking on the door 15 years.
Yeah. Okay.
It was about 12 years.
12
probably.
years. Okay.
Yeah.
So before Memphis was ever a mention,
Yeah.
what did marriage and life look like at that point? As far as was marriage good? You guys had you guys accepted, hey, it's maybe not going to happen?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So
No,
it was still heavy thought, heavy prayer of, God, we want to be parents.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we weren't giving up on it. I think what we had kind of agreed to give up on was fertility, because when we first did that and we spent all this money, we were not educated in that process at all. And we just kind of thought it was guaranteed. Like, hey, we give you this money, you do this process, you put this here, and then we have a baby. Like, this is how we do it. It's just going to cost us more money than the next people, No, that's not how it works. And the odds are not in your favor. And we didn't understand those things. And then when we had that realization, and we talked about it, we were like, well, I understand you would like the experience, and I would like, and all of that stuff too. I think what we're after is a child. And we can spend all that money and still not have a guarantee of a child, or we can continue going through the hardship of adoptions. And it's not going to be fun, but eventually
had y'all started looking into adoption?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd started through the state. You can adopt a kid for a few $100s. It's a long application process, and it's not fun, and you have to kind of set up as a foster first, and we're working with the call and different things. And our church was very big on adoption. There were several families in there that were walking that out really well, so we had these people to lean on as resources and things. And then when we sold our house in Lincoln, we'd been to some classes, we'd done the application, and we're finally in the spot for the home inspection. And they call me, now it's been 6 months, and they're finally getting around to inspecting our house. And I was like, oh yeah, come on over. I was like, now we're closing next week, so this isn't going to be, and like, oh, wait a minute, what do you mean? He said, well, this isn't going to be where we live. We're going to build a bigger house though. Like, that won't work. You'll need to reapply then. And I mean, that was so discouraging. We were like, oh my goodness, man.
And at the time, you're probably so deflated and so
oh yeah.
But you had no, God was shutting a door because he had another door being open.
Was going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And then isn't that crazy? Because at the time you're just like all hope, all hope's lost. And
Yep.
so I don't understand this God, probably frustrated, mad. And God's going, I have to do this because I got something planned for you,
Yeah.
So, and this is kind of really cool because, me and Nutt, we've got a lot of history together. We've had highs and lows. We've wanted to kill each other at certain times. But we've been more like brothers.
Yep.
I mean, we truly just try to hold each other accountable. We care about each other. We've been through a lot of things together, but what's really cool is what God allowed us to share together. So I'll go into what was going on in my life. Me and my wife had been married, and we had kids, and I don't know. I have to ask. I think that we had our two young girls by then. Okay, so we had adopted my two younger girls are adopted, and we had them, and and that was pretty early into having the girls, but Jennifer's cousin had gotten pregnant and was I think going to prison, or
not at that time. She wasn't.
Okay, I think but anyway, she was pregnant and was going to give the kid up for adoption
or have an abortion.
And they didn't tell us about it. We found out about it. They had looked on, they found an ad in the newspaper of like
an
agency giving up adoption. And somehow we found out about it. And my wife actually goes, I wonder if Anthony and Crystal would be interested in adopting her child. And we were literally driving. We were going maybe to eat or something. It was in the evening. And I was like, I'm going to call him right now.
Yeah.
Because I knew. Like, when she said that, I was like, this fits. This is God. I just knew. And Jennifer was like, no, you shouldn't call him. I was like, no, I'll guarantee you I need to call him right now.
And you said, have you and Crystal been praying about anything?
No, I said, Nutt, what is your number one prayer? And you first answered like an idiot, like normal.
Yeah, no, that's not. You said, can I ask you something personal? And that's when I answered like an idiot.
Oh, yeah.
But then
and I
you
had
said,
you on speakerphone with all my kids stuff. And I was like, Nutt, you idiot. Like, we're being serious here. Yeah.
But then you said, no, seriously. You said, have you and Crystal been praying about anything big? And I said, yes. And you said, can I ask you what? And I said, for children.
Yeah.
And you said, all right, this is for you.
Yeah.
And you said, you told me the situation, and you're like, I don't know if you guys are like, yes. You know, well, now, you know, she's going to be, or you said that it's a girl. I was like, okay, yes. And you're like, okay, well, she's going to be half black, half white. I was like, yes. You're like, do you want to talk to your wife first? I was like, sure, let me call her. I'll call you right back and tell you yes. You know, like, we're good. We'll take it. You know,
Yeah.
So
fast forwarding, you end up getting her at birth, right? Being there,
yes.
Being there at the hospital.
The induction was scheduled, and she was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and we were there. She came out at 12:02. I think they put 12 on 1 on her birth certificate by mistake. I was watching. It was 12:02, and Crystal got to cut the umbilical cord, and I was the first one to feed her. Crystal was in the room when it happened. And then Crystal cut the umbilical cord, and I was the first one to feed her. And then she stayed that night in the hospital room with us. So,
yeah, it was crazy to just be. It was so special to be a part of that and to know, because I knew that you guys have been wanting kids and praying about it, and
it was special to have you as a part of that.
Yeah,
for sure.
And
I remember I told you, I was like, the only thing I got to say, man, is like, if this doesn't work out, you can't not talk to me anymore, because everybody, and that's not the first phone call I've had like that. And it's just the first one that's worked out. And I was just flattered that people thought of us, you know, or would think of us in that capacity. But I think they just felt like, and they would know our story. So like, this is just one more failure. And then they just kind of ghost
feel like
us.
it let you down.
Yeah, they feel like and they didn't.
And,
you know,
and it'd be like, how do you not bring that up? Or
yeah.
But So and what's so crazy is Memphis literally looks
just like me and Crystal.
Yeah,
like
a blend
between me and Crystal.
Because Crystal's Indian. Did she have,
no, she found out she was adopted at 33.
Oh,
so she's actually Well,
she's dark.
She's half. We believe she's half Hispanic.
Okay,
she's Mexican. Yeah.
Well, anyway, she kind of
has that darker
complexion,
the perfect complexion.
And then Nutt's got super curly hair,
yeah.
and Memphis has dark hair, and she's kind of lighter skin, but a little bit of a.
She looks like her mama on the skin, but she looks like her daddy in the eyes and in the hair.
Yeah. So I mean, a perfect fit, sweet thing. She's got a great personality, and
she gets that from me.
Yeah, but it's incredible. You know, the reason that I wanted to bring Nutt on, and it's just because we both relate in the fact of. We can't believe what God has allowed us to be a part of.
Yeah.
We can't believe that, you know, that God allowed us to be husbands.
Yeah.
And to put, because, you know, really, if you look at statistics, you would say, okay, marriage got hard, had problems, you get divorced, you move on to another one. To try, you know what I mean? I mean,
try it again.
Yeah, you don't try to make it work. You just cancel that one and go on to the next one. And the fact that you decided, no, I'm going to fight for it, make it work, and then didn't give up on children. God blessed you with your little girl, and now have been through the battle of a tested marriage. You've been through the battle of, am I going to get to ever be a father or not?
Yeah.
And now you're just reaping the rewards. Because none of that would have happened if you wouldn't have became faithful to God.
Absolutely not.
And you can't on our own merit.
I was not capable of saving my marriage.
Yeah.
I wasn't responsible enough. I wasn't wise enough. I was in it for me. And when we start looking at marriage as a happiness generator, it's going to fail because that's not the design by the Creator. Marriage is meant to make us holy, not necessarily happy. Happy is a byproduct of the holiness that we learn to walk in.
Yeah.
And when we use it as the tool that our Creator designed it as, it's going to produce happiness, but it's a byproduct of a healthy marriage.
Well, and if you base the merit of marriage on emotion, it'll fail every time.
Right.
Because there's a time to where you can't hardly look at each other.
Correct.
You can't stand each other,
Yeah. Yeah.
And, yeah, it's just, but it is crazy that, and that's, nothing, there wasn't really something that was put into us to make things work, right? We showed that outside of God, we destroyed things. We put ourselves on a self-destructive path. But all God needs is just us to say, God, please help me. Help me to figure this out. Give me the wisdom and the understanding. God doesn't need anything to work with other than just a surrendered heart.
Yep.
Just surrendering to Him. And God starts showing us how to be men.
He doesn't
how to
call
be husbands.
the equipped. He equips the called.
Equips the called. Yep. And then too, Nutt, just in business, we both dropped out of high school. Neither one of us finished high school. Did you ever get your GED?
I did.
Okay, so we got our GEDs, but I dropped out in 10th grade. I'm not really sure. Did you make it to 11th grade?
Yeah, it was early 11th grade.
Okay. So, we just similar paths. So that's probably why we've been such good friends. You just got a lot of relatable deals. But, you've been very successful. And God's just given you wisdom and just understanding, and you're good at what you do. You make companies that you work for better. Like you're all in. You're just
almost to a fault with my level of all in. A lot of the time, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's just it's how you are. You're not going to give a half effort if somebody's relying on you. Right. And I think you carry that into your marriage. You carry that into being a father, and then you carry it into business. And that's what God wants. God wants us to be diligent. He wants us to be honorable and to walk upright and let our yeses be yes, our no's be no. Do what's right, even if it hurts us, even if there's consequences to doing what's right. And God has just honored you. It's really, that's the thing that in these podcasts, I just hope that clicks with somebody that has never given God a chance. Or maybe just a brief chance, and when it gets hard, goes, oh man, what's the point? But truly surrendering to God and letting God put people and open up doors and put stuff in us that don't even exist. Yeah. We didn't know what it looked like to be a good father and to be a good husband and to stick it out and to not run and not give up and trust God even when it seems like forever, or to bounce back from pain and hurt and let down, whatever, only God, the only reason we even made it through that or know how to deal with that is because God put it in there.
That's right.
There's nothing that we...
And, God put in my life too, when I was 14, my mom met my technically stepdad, I call him dad, now.
Oh, yeah.
And, man, he poured into my life, and he was the boot in my butt that I needed, from time to time, like you were talking about that we were missing and lacking.
Yeah.
But the first time I met him, technically on my mom and his first date, he was arresting me. I came across on the radio and she was like, "That's my son." And he's like, picked up the mic and took the call and said, "Officer so-and-so en route." So he was in civilian clothes, but I came as a favor to my mom. He came and picked me up, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we had you'll remember, it was a hard relationship.
Oh, yeah. He did not like us.
He didn't like us at all, and for good reason.
Oh, yeah.
We wouldn't like us either.
No.
I promise you.
No, I think the first time I met him, I was doing donuts in the Aldi's parking lot, and him and your mom was standing out there. I don't know why they were there. Why are you out there? But yeah, he quickly did not like me. But Joey, Joey loves us now. He's a great guy, and he has been kind of.
He loves Jesus now. And actually, that's something else that God's done for me is I used to have this desire to go to church with my mom and dad, big time when I was a kid. Well, by me walking that out, and they know what we went through in our marriage and different things and what seemed hopeless. And it was, if we're talking about me and Crystal. But fortunately, we had a restorer get involved.
Yeah.
And that we invited into the situation. And they got a front row seat to watching that restoration happen and go, man, my mom started going to church with us. And then a few weeks later, you know, Joey walks in one Sunday morning and goes, what I'm wearing okay. And then, you know, he started going to church. And the transformation in him is, you know, he's a man of God. He's a leader, you know, of that. And it's so encouraging to have him in my life and to have that relationship with him. I mean, we're very close.
Yeah.
You know.
It'll be good to have Joe and your mom on the podcast. Just to hear their perspective, what they were thinking. Yeah, that's it is crazy. Yeah, God's good, man.
Yeah,
and we're blessed to God to allow what's happened to our life and the restoration and the healing and you know, like I said, some of the stuff that we talk about are shameful and they are embarrassing, but we don't mind talking about them. Somebody asks, or we're trying to use as an example because we know we're new men. Like, we're not that same person. And it's like talking about somebody that don't even exist anymore. And it's just because God's just changed us.
If part of my, you know, regrettable story can point somebody towards the Redeemer that saved me out of it, you know, that's great. I think to your point earlier, what is, like, when we tell this stuff, it's not to glorify it. You know, it's not at all. It's just to say, man, you can't get much more rank than what we were, and look at what God was able to do. And if you'll just, you know, allow him and be available and put your faith and trust in him and just say, I don't have to see what's around the next corner, but I'm going to trust that I'm going to go there with you. It kind of makes me think of, you know, the passage in Psalms where David talks about green pastures and depending upon the shepherd, right? And a lot of people, I don't know if you're aware of this, but green pastures is actually a place just off of the Mediterranean, and it looks like a rock mountainside. And whenever I think of green pastures, I think of that farmland in Flippin. You know, like this abundance of alfalfa. And when has your life ever been that? As a Christian? You know, but when you look at that hillside, you can actually see it. There's like paths cut in from sheep from thousands of years ago, and they're just far enough apart where their heads would touch. And where the wind blows off of that Mediterranean, there's little grass that pops up, little tufts in that rock. And you're thinking, are these rock-eating sheep? You know, like when you look out there. But the shepherd leads them to their next mouthful. Mm-hmm. And that's what it looks like. You know, when you can say, I don't know. I know that I'm not happy right now in my marriage, but I know that the shepherd is going to lead me and sustain me. And I'm trusting in him to provide.
Yeah. You got to make that decision. Whether you're going to fight or flight. Yeah. And it's about everything with walking with God, because we're to renew our mind every day. It's a commitment to serve the Lord every day. And we're challenged. Sometimes, maybe it's not every day. Sometimes it feels like it's every day. But in life, many times you get challenged to where it's like, it'd be better just to be like, you know what, forget it. Just give up. Drown yourself in whiskey and you know, or go get high and just get your mind off of it. But God commands us to always be clear-minded so we can think about our problem. And he says the wicked flee in Proverbs. The wicked flee when no one even pursues them. They'll create things in their mind, create their own problem. And really it's no one pursuing them but themselves. So just, they're so, you know, down or out. But it says the righteous are as bold as lions. God, you know, a lion doesn't run from anybody. You know, a lion is going to stare you down and attack the problem. And that's how God calls us as Christians. Is like, look, you're going to have problems, but don't run from them. Trust me, deal with the consequence, deal with the issue, and let me get you through that problem. And but a lot of times, even reading that and knowing, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to have to face the problem.
I wish I could say I never make a mistake and always get it right, but I don't.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
And but we
Cool.
know a Savior that covers that.
Yeah,
those shortcomings.
Well, no, I know we spared everybody from endless hours of storytelling
that are irrelevant.
Yeah. And too, some of them, they're not worth telling anyway. But Nutt, I'm proud of you, and
Thanks,
it's been amazing. It's been fun. Even with all the ups and downs, we laugh a lot. Anytime me and you talk, we end up. Usually, if you're calling, it's probably the same way when I'm calling. We have to decide if we got 30 minutes to an hour because we're going to end up telling old stories and
catching up.
Yeah,
but we've done a good job of even before Memphis, and after. But we've done a good job of staying in touch with one another as adults. Ever since your wedding, really.
Yeah.
We've been where we talk multiple times a month, or maybe sometimes it's once a month or whatever. But we still stay in good touch with each other.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think it's relevant because we lift each other up in the Lord. I think, when we're talking this kind of filling each other out, where's your walk with God? What's God doing in your life? And making sure that we're staying, that we understand that we have a purpose, and it's to share the gospel, to be a light, to witness to people, to find people in our life that we can encourage and maybe help pull out of the pit and the struggle or sin that they're in, and use our own life and testimony of what God's done in our life.
And how many times have we called one another and go, "Hey, real quick, I'm about to let's pray."
Yeah,
that it's happened several times.
Yeah,
and I'm thankful for it. And but think about that relationship today versus the 7th grade version of us. Oh man, I'd much rather take the version of us today. Than that. So.
Well, Nutt, thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, man.
And thanks for just taking the time out. And,
thanks for having me. For sure.
I appreciate you. Guys, thanks for watching this episode, my buddy Nutt. And I just hope it encourages you to know that God has a plan for your life. Me and Nutt, at one point in our life, we had no clue what the plan was. We had no idea that one day we would be married, have kids, and be living for Him and doing what we're doing now. We probably grew up more thinking there wasn't a plan for us, that we'd gotten forgotten, that it was just, we were going to be losers, and and we kind of played that out. But God had a different plan. God has a plan for everybody. And it's just surrendering to Him. And that's what me and Nutt both chose to do, is just to surrender to God and let God take over our life, because us controlling our life was not good. And as soon as we let God take over, it hasn't been easy, but it's been great.
Yep.
And it's a good feeling knowing that God's got our back, and He's always wanting to mold us better, not worse. So, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. And remember, the quickest way to become an idiot is to hang out with idiots, and you'll quickly become one.